Oftentimes, when we're designing kitchens, especially in design videos, we do tend to design or show inspiration around larger kitchens. And today, that is not what we're doing. Today, we're going over tiny, micro, Euro kitchens, small kitchens, really, really small kitchens, and how to best design them for optimal functionality and use and just enjoyment, even if you don't cook. It's nice to have a nice kitchen space, right? So when we're thinking of tiny kitchens, one of the key things with these tiny or micro kitchens is to really optimize every square inch. So one of the ways, especially if you're doing a new design or a redesign, this is a great little underutilized space that you can use, and that is that space underneath your baseboard. They're called plinth drawers, and basically it's this little 4-inch gap that you have underneath your regular cabinetry that you can actually have drawers installed. I've seen them used for really cool, cute hacks for pets, so you can put your dog bowls in them and they can pop out, which I thought was kind of neat. And then there's also, using it for sheet storage, like sheet pan storage or muffin tin storage, anything that's kind of like low profile because you only have the 4 inches. But it is a great underutilized space, especially if you're looking at a tiny or micro kitchen where every square inch is going to need to be utilized really, really effectively. And another area that we want to expand on is going all the way up. So when we're thinking about our kitchen, we don't want to forget about that top part of the cabinet. So oftentimes in kind of a standard kitchen, you'll see that there is a gap above the cabinetry. Now this works whether you're renting a space with a tiny kitchen or if you're installing a new kitchen. So if you're doing a new design with a tiny kitchen footprint, think about expanding those cabinets all the way to the top. Oftentimes it'll be another box cabinet that sits on top of it. That's a little bit more of the more affordable way of doing it. You can also have custom cabinetry that of course goes all the way up. But with that being said, if you have a rental or you already have an existing tiny kitchen and you just need to maximize the space that you have, IKEA has really cute storage boxes you can get depending on what your style is. Like for me, I'd probably go with something like a rattan because I like that boho look. And you can use that to store items that maybe you don't use that often. You'll definitely need a step stool to access it. But that being said, it is a great space that you can really take advantage of, summer stuff that you don't use or serving trays that you don't use very often. Just extra things that aren't on the everyday can go up in those really high up cabinetry or storage baskets, depending on what area or what type of kitchen you have. So that's a great way to maximize from the floor all the way to the top. And that's another, key thing is if you have, say, a fridge, like a full-size fridge in your micro kitchen. I find a lot of times in micro kitchens, we don't have full-size appliances, but even if you have a tall fridge, use that space above it, use all of the space in your kitchen from the floor to the ceiling, and make sure that you get as much cabinetry and storage as possible from within that, floor to ceiling space that you have. Just a brief pause here. If you don't mind hitting that like button, I would greatly appreciate it. Shows me that you are enjoying the content and helps me know to keep making more of it. All right, thank you. So leading into our appliances, one of the things with micro kitchens often, and I actually am from Europe, so I have family that lives in Poland and Sweden. Sweden is more like Canada, so not quite the same. But in Poland, the micro kitchen is definitely a thing. And one of the key things I've noticed is that a lot of times they have basically a bar fridge as their fridge. Now, it does require that you're going to be purchasing food obviously more often, like things that will spoil. You're not going to be able to stock up, which I think is a really North American kind of thing, is being able to stock up and have lots of stuff in our fridge. So where I have family living, I am used to seeing them kind of more regularly go out and get their fresh ingredients that they need. It might only last a couple days and then they'll go out and get more, but they do buy smaller amounts at a time. So it's just a different way of living. I find, if you say you're in New York City and micro kitchens and tiny kitchens are a part of your, normal everyday kind of life, kind of any major city that has smaller footprints apartments, you're probably used to having this, whether you're, using Uber Eats or takeout and all those kind of things, or even just purchasing smaller amounts on a regular basis. So really thinking about downsizing your appliances is a key factor, but there's also some really excellent small scale appliances for these spaces. So, shrinking down your fridge is one, but there are full height narrow fridges. I've actually used them quite often in corporate design projects because oftentimes you're putting in a kitchenette that really is a full service kitchen, but we don't need the big fridge and the big stove and the big dishwasher. So we do micro size of them all. So there's a great fridge that I've used often. I'll link it below and I'll show a picture of it here. It's a Whirlpool kind of narrow fridge. I've also used a Bosch dishwasher that is super, super compact. It's only 18 inches wide. However, they also have the single drawer ones now, which depending on your layout, one or the other might make more sense because with the drawer one, you probably get some storage underneath it. So depending on how small and how tiny your kitchen is, you might want to decide, which one you go with. And even for your cooktop, if you don't need an oven and you just use, maybe like an air fryer, like the stand counter ones, you could do that. If you don't need an oven, some people just do double burners on a surface and that's all you need. But if you do need the oven, you can look at doing even an apartment size oven that's quite small and quite compact, or do the double burner and just a smaller, installed in your cabinetry oven, so they're not really one unit, right? So there's lots of ways that we can look at bringing in small appliances. Tiny houses are great with utilizing tiny spaces, and this isn't specifically for tiny houses, but they're really great inspiration for how to get some of those, things that we want in our kitchen, but on a very small scale. So appliances, there's lots of options and lots of flexibility, and you just have to be a little bit creative with how you lay them out. So one of the issues often with your tiny kitchen and your small space is counter space, right? We need counter space, especially if you do enjoy cooking. Like I love cooking. So, counter space is something that you definitely need. So how do we maximize that? A great area that we can maximize your kitchen space is actually utilizing your sink. So a lot of times you can get, if you're doing a new countertop especially, them to cut out a template of your sink, and you can either have it made with the countertop material and it can have a little hole in it and it just sits right inside of your sink, and then it gives you more kitchen prep space. You can also opt to get one made out of butcher block, and then it can actually be used as your cutting board, which is great as well. So don't negate using that sink space as an additional prep space when you're not doing dishes. I think that's a great use of tiny space. So sometimes with your tiny kitchens and your small spaces, you don't want it to feel claustrophobic or small. Just because it is small doesn't mean you want it to feel small. So trying to think of materials that will make the space feel bigger. So thinking of light and bright materials. So like thinking of a white countertop, but then taking that countertop and running it up the backsplash. That's a great way of like streamlining a space. Think more of that modern minimalistic look where you keep things really, really clean and simple from a decor standpoint, not too busy. Don't get me wrong. You can do a great like eclectic, retro, fun kitchen vibe if that's the look you're going for. Tiny's tiny. You can embrace it however you want. But if you want it to feel a little bit more spacious than it is, opting for some of those lighter materials and then using the same material from your countertop to your backsplash will definitely help make it appear a little bit larger. And of course, keeping things in a lighter color and trying not to clutter your countertops too much. So really optimizing your storage is key to try and make it feel a little bit bigger and creating a space for everything, right? Everything having a home. So when we're thinking about every place having a home, that's thinking about, really creative storage solutions. So oftentimes, we're used to seeing a drawer pull out or a cabinet, and it's just your standard shelves or pull out drawer, etc. Now, what we can do is we can really optimize those drawers. So oftentimes when you have a pull-out drawer, especially like the deep ones where you see pots and pans, there's a bit of dead space that lives kind of in between that. And you can actually have it designed that there's another internal drawer, which could add for your cutlery, your, cooking utensils, etc. So think about what type of cabinetry you can get that you can optimize the space within it. if you have existing cabinetry and you just want to look at making them function better, Richelieu is a great hardware manufacturer, and you can actually get a lot of great pull-out systems that are integrated with, different layers. They work in corners. They add in all that flexibility and additional space management that you need within your cabinetry. So just because you have existing cabinets that don't have that doesn't mean you can't modify them with some really great hardware to make them have better capacity and better storage within the space. Sorry, I keep hitting my thing on this cup and it keeps clinking. Other creative storage items might be adding in like a little rail across the backsplash that you can hang, different things on. I've seen like really cute ones from IKEA that you can add, even if it's just for some flowers and some like herbs or something. There's lots of really creative ways, or adding some nice cups that you like to display. There's ways of doing that. There's also, you could do like a little plate wall, maybe on the side of a cabinet, where you can add in some extra, serving plates and different things. And it's kind of like a slat system that you can slide them into. So there's lots of really creative ways that you can also expand your cabinetry. You can also think about going outside of the kitchen. Now, I had a tiny apartment. I think it was 450 square feet when I was younger. So something that I did to add more storage space through, those pantry items like canned goods, etc., that I wanted to have a place for it, but I also did not have a kitchen that could fit all of this stuff. So IKEA had a Billy bookcase, and you could actually buy doors that go on it. And I actually did that in one of my places that I lived in, and it became my pantry storage. Now, I didn't have it in the kitchen, I had it adjacent to the kitchen. But that's another thing. You don't have to think about keeping everything right inside of your kitchen space, especially if it's not like an everyday item. So canned goods, dried goods, cereals, all those kind of things can really maybe live in a cabinet just outside of the kitchen, depending on how tiny your apartment is or how creatively you can add that in. But there's lots of ways to think about, kind of doing a freestanding pantry that will really help alleviate some of the storage constraints in a tiny or micro kitchen. And although with our tiny kitchens, we are thinking about maximizing all of those little nooks and crannies for storage, it's still a space that we can express ourselves and do interesting and creative design elements, thinking about adding beautiful hardware in. One of the best parts about a tiny kitchen is that you can splurge on some items because you don't need very much of it. So that's where you can really do something fun, add some fun hardware in, do something really creative, and, spend a little bit more money on a few of those little jewelry pieces. Maybe the sink faucet that you select, or, the sink basin. There's some really beautiful ones that are, got the storage layer things in it. So I can't remember what they're called, but they're kind of neat. So there's lots of options to kind of add those really elevated touches in your tiny kitchen to make it feel just perfect. So if you enjoyed this video today, I have other kitchen videos. I'll link the playlist for you, and you can check out some trends video or some, other organizational tips, whether you have a tiny kitchen or a big kitchen. Really, you can, implement different things into any size. So until next time, bye. It is rather sunny today. We are going to make it work. Okay.